Welcome to the Monsters Among Us podcast. This is episode 18, Vanished Hunters. We continue our talk about the missing 411 topic, and this time the focus is on hunters.
That's right.
We've compiled information from interviews with researcher David Paulides on Big Buck Registry and Coast to Coast AM to really dig into these truly strange cases. Experienced hunters disappearing in our parks and forests under circumstances that often, well, they just defy logic.
They really do.
Yeah.
And what makes these instances so compelling is the profile of the people involved. I mean, we aren't talking about novices wandering off unprepared.
Right.
These are seasoned hunters, people who know their hunting grounds sometimes for decades, right? Often carrying firearms, navigation tools.
Yeah, they've got a level of outdoor skill that just makes the idea of them getting lost seem, well, unlikely. It makes you ask, what else could be going on?
Exactly. It's their turf. You know, they know the paths, the landmarks, the usual dangers. So when they vanish, it's not like some tourist stepping off a trail.
No.
It feels like something much more unusual is happening.
And, you know, in survival situations, the standard advice is signal for help. What do the sources say about that in these cases? Does it happen?
Well, that's one of the fascinating and frankly weird parts. The apparent lack of distress signals. You know, the 3 shots thing is often taught in hunter safety, but it seems surprisingly rare in these specific disappearances. Paulides also really stresses carrying enough ammo, like 16, 20 rounds maybe.
Okay.
So you can signal over time if you need to. The fact that this basic response is missing so often, it's a big question mark. Why wouldn't someone armed, probably in trouble, try to signal?
It's completely counterintuitive, isn't it? If you're equipped and lost or hurt, signaling is the first thing you'd think of.
It really is.
It definitely highlights how useful something like a personal locator beacon could be.
Oh, absolutely. The constant recommendation for PLBs just hammers home how they can potentially solve so many of these mysteries.
Yeah.
You know, a direct line to rescuers, precise location.
Yeah.
You just have to wonder how many of these baffling cases might have ended differently with one. But even putting technology aside, the basics of these cases just keep showing this pattern of strangeness.
Okay, so beyond the hunter's experience and the missing signals, what are the other hallmarks, the recurring things that make these cases feel so distinct?
Right, this is where the patterns really start to jump out. One of the most common things reported is the search dogs. Trained canine units just can't get a scent trail.
Really? Like consistently?
Yeah, it's not just an occasional thing. We're talking multiple dogs, good dogs with proven track records, unable to pick up any scent beyond a certain point. Or sometimes not at all from where the person was last seen.
Wow.
I mean, think about how good a dog's sense of smell is. For them to consistently fail like that, it makes you think maybe something environmental is masking the scent or, well, something else is going on entirely.
That's deeply unsettling. You count on those dogs. If they can't find a trace, it's almost like the person just wasn't there anymore. And it's not just the scent, is it?
No, often it goes hand in hand with a total lack of tracks or any other physical sign showing where they went. Professional trackers, guys who can read tiny signs on the ground. They often report finding 0 footprints leading away from that last known spot. It's like the person just lifted off the ground, vanished without disturbing anything.
No scent, no tracks. It does paint a picture of someone being maybe removed rather than just wandering off lost. What about the conditions? Anything weird about the weather or environment?
Yes, actually.
Yeah.
Another recurring thing is unexpected, often severe, weather. Not just a bit of rain, but sudden, unpredicted storms or big temperature shifts happening right around the time they disappear or during the search.
Huh. Another strange element popping up frequently.
Exactly.
And the terrain itself? Any common features in these locations?
Well, one thing that Paulides points out is the presence of boulder fields in the general area. It's mentioned often enough to be considered noteworthy.
Boulder field.
Yeah. Now, it's not every single case, but it shows up enough that you start to wonder, could these tricky geological areas play a role somehow? Maybe hiding a trail or something else?
Boulder fields. They can be dangerous, sure, but for an experienced hunter, it still doesn't quite feel like the whole explanation. What gets me, though, is what happens during the searches. Or sometimes, what doesn't happen.
Precisely. And this is maybe one of the most baffling parts. People who disappear are sometimes later found in areas that have already been searched multiple times, thoroughly.
Well, seriously, areas that they already cleared.
Yes, which suggests either the person wasn't there when they first searched, which is strange in itself, or they were somehow moved there after the searchers had already been through. Both options are just Deeply troubling.
It makes no sense. You grid search an area, dogs go through, people shoulder to shoulder, and days later, the missing person is suddenly in that cleared zone. It just, wow. Let's maybe look at a specific case. Tom Messick, Northeast New York, 2015. That one seems to tick a lot of these boxes.
It really does. So you've got an 82-year-old guy, Tom Messick, hunter safety instructor, 40 years of experience.
Very experienced in.
Very. He's hunting with friends, but he has bad knees, he's blind in one eye, partially deaf. So he was basically sitting still in a prearranged spot. Key point. Only about 40, 50 feet from the road. He wasn't supposed to be moving far at all.
Okay, so stationary, close to the road. And didn't he hear something odd?
Yeah, he apparently told his group earlier he heard this really loud, strange sound. Described it like a giant steel trap slamming shut. But nobody else heard it.
Weird.
They were all on walkie-talkies, same channel. But no call from him, nothing to suggest trouble. His son insisted, given his dad's condition, he couldn't have wandered far. Which brings up that no tracks thing again. How does someone move any real distance from that spot, so close to a road, without leaving a sign?
And the search effort was huge, right? But there was something else strange about it, too.
Oh, massive search. Hundreds of volunteers, 12 fire departments, search dogs combed the area. Nothing. Not Tom, not his rifle. Gone.
Just vanished.
And here's the other strange layer. FBI agents showed up. They apparently monitored the search for 6 days.
The FBI. For a missing hunter on state land.
Exactly. No explanation given, no hint of a federal crime. It just adds another layer of high strangeness to an already baffling case. His wife was even told by searchers later how strange it was that absolutely nothing was found.
It's just mind-boggling. Experienced guy, close to a road, massive search, FBI involved for some reason, and poof, nothing. Rules out getting lost, rules out animal attack, no signs. It really fits this pattern.
It does.
Okay, let's take another one. Fortunato Rivera, Maine, 1993. This one's different because they did find him, but the circumstances, they raise even more questions.
Yeah, this one is really disturbing. Fortunato is 79, not very mobile at all. His son leaves him in a hunting blind, says he'll be back in like 30 minutes.
Half an hour. That's a really short window.
Tiny window. And within that time, Fortunato disappears. Again, mobility issues, hard for him to cover much ground quickly.
Okay, but they found him, he said. Where?
2 days later, he's found face up in a shallow reservoir about 20 feet from the shore. But here's the thing. He's missing his coat, his shirt, and his boots. This is mid-November in Maine.
No coat, shirt, or boots. In November. And how far away was this reservoir?
To get there from the blind, he would have had to cross really tough terrain, a small mountain, a boulder field for about 2 miles. And it was in the opposite direction from where his son left him.
Okay, wait. Not mobile. Disappears in 30 minutes. Found 2 miles away across mountains and boulders, face up in water, missing warm clothes in November. That doesn't add up at all.
Not even slightly. The coroner's report said hypothermia and a heart attack. But the son, even the warden service, they found that explanation incredibly unlikely. Given his lack of mobility, the direction he supposedly went, how he was found, it just didn't fit.
It sounds like maybe a convenient explanation.
Right.
What Paulides calls local reports for local consumption.
That's exactly the kind of thing it suggests. An official cause of death that maybe smooths things over locally, but doesn't actually align with the physical evidence or the timeline. It just deepens the unease around these cases.
Let's look back even further. Robert Smith, Maine, 1897. You mentioned this one shows how even huge searches can fail.
Right. Robert Smith, 70 years old, experienced deer hunter. He'd recently recovered from cancer, but he knew the land well. It was family land he was hunting on with his brothers and wife.
Familiar territory, then what happened?
Around 2:30 in the afternoon, he decides to walk just a short half circle from his stand. He's wearing a bright orange vest, carrying his rifle. Should have been highly visible.
Okay, short walk, bright vest. Knows the area. He didn't come back.
Didn't come back. They launched a massive 9-day search. Hundreds of people, K-9 units, aircraft, even experts from the Naval Aviation School. They covered 18,000 acres.
18,000 acres. Wow. They must have found something.
Nothing. Absolutely no trace of Robert Smith. The senior game warden at the time just admitted they were totally baffled. Bright orange vest, familiar land, huge search. Gone.
It's incredible. Daylight, visibility, familiarity, massive resources, and still nothing. It really does make you question what we think we know about simply disappearing.
It absolutely does.
We've talked about no recovery, questionable recovery. What about the skill level? Does extreme expertise help? The case of Rudy Mater in Rocky Mountain National Park, 1983, he sounds like he was incredibly skilled.
Oh, top-tier skills. Rudy Mater was 27, German national. He'd been in the German Mountain Army Corps, had experience mountaineering in the Himalayas. Elite level.
Wow. So not someone likely to get lost easily.
Not at all. He went backcountry skiing alone, planned a 3-day trip. He was well prepared for that kind of environment.
Yeah.
He didn't return. They searched for 4 days. They actually found a small snow cave he'd built and a food cache he'd left. So signs he was there, he was prepared initially.
Okay, so they found his camp, basically.
Sort of, yeah. But they never found him. Or his skis, his bindings, his poles, his boots. Nothing. And there was no sign of an avalanche in the area that could explain it.
So an elite mountaineer, experienced, prepared, vanishes, leaving his gear behind. No avalanche.
Exactly. It just underscores that even the highest level of skill and preparation doesn't seem to be a defense against whatever is happening in these cases.
It keeps coming back to these same disturbing themes, doesn't it? Experienced people vanishing without a sign, sometimes found where they shouldn't be or under circumstances that just don't make sense. It really does leave you with far more questions than answers.
It really does. When you look at these cases together, it paints a picture that seems to go way beyond just getting lost or having an accident in the woods. The consistency of these weird factors, the dogs hitting a wall, no tracks, the strange weather, the boulder fields, the recoveries in searched areas, it strongly suggests something else is going on, something we just don't have a framework for right now.
It makes you think about medical examiners, too. You mentioned they sometimes acknowledge privately that something's off.
Yeah, Paulides mentions talking to MEs who, off the record, will say some cases are just inexplicable. They can't determine a cause of death that fits the evidence or lack thereof. There might have been, and sometimes still is, pressure to provide some cause of death, even if it's speculative, just to close the file.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on vanished hunters, it really forces you to consider the limits of what we understand about the wilderness and maybe, the vulnerabilities we all might face out there, even people who really know what they're doing.
That's absolutely the point for you, the listener, to ponder. Think about these patterns, these unanswered questions. What could possibly account for experienced, equipped individuals vanishing so completely, defying all logical explanations and search efforts? It pushes us to consider possibilities, maybe phenomena in these wild places that are currently outside our understanding. It's a pretty sobering thought about our own assumptions when we step into the natural world.